emission reduction of 60% by 2035. This is what we have to do. This is what we have to do here in the next couple of days. And we have to do that to keep the Paris Agreement alive, to keep 1.5 alive, I may even add to keep faith in the multilateral system here as we speak. And we have texts, we have options on the table, which in the right combination allow us to achieve these outcomes. And now we need to refine these texts. We need to reduce the options, and we need to move to consensus and to ambition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lisa, please.
Thank you very much, dear Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. The European Parliament's delegation is here to support the EU negotiators, which means the Presidency and the Commission, but we are also here to push them and to scrutinize them. You know, the European Parliament is co-legislator, so whatever the European Union commits, when we put it into legislation, we need to agree, and we are also part of the budgetary authority. And that's why we are here, and we have adopted ahead of the COP a resolution with a huge majority where we outline our priorities, and we clearly said that we will not be ready to accept any result. We need a result that really addresses the challenges. And it's clear we are here also to represent European citizens. We, in our resolution and in our talks here, we support the tripling of renewable energies. We support the doubling of energy efficiency and a tangible phase-out of fossil fuels as soon as possible, including by halting all new investments in fossil fuel extraction. I quote from our resolution. Above all, we ask for rapid, deep and sustained mitigation efforts to achieve the reduction of 43% by 2030, as it was mentioned by the Commissioner. This is in our resolution. And please note, we ask the developed countries and the major emitters to lead by example. The European Union is tremendously ambitious when it comes to the reduction of greenhouse gases, and that is also due to the Parliament. You know, original ideas of the Commission in the climate law was 55% reduction until 2030, as it is our international commitment. The Parliament pushed for higher ambition, and we are now in our legislation at 57%. So we overachieve our international commitment. That will bring us to per capita emissions. We have currently per capita emissions at 6.32 tons, 6.32. We will go below 4 tons in 2030 by implementing the legislation that is already there. So not plans, not ideas, but legislation. Also, when it comes to climate finance, the European Union is a front runner. About more than half of the pledges that have been made here in Dubai for loss and damage, more than half of the 700 million comes from Team Europe, Commission and Member States. And you know, this has to be noted, and we have to defend this at home. People ask us, you do it, it's right, we like ambition, but they also ask, what are others doing? Do we only lead, but do others follow? And here we have not yet the picture that we need. I acknowledge what the Presidency has done on loss and damage and also the well-organized COP here, but when we look at the per capita emissions of the Emirates, they are at 21.75. So, and there's no plan to reduce them as we do in Europe. The same applies to the United States. Per capita emissions more than 14 tons. And even if, which we all hope, President Biden is successful, they will be around 10 tons in 2030. And also China has already per capita emissions higher than the European Union. the emissions are at 8.85 tons, and there's no plan from China to reduce them by 20%, 30%, or 55%. So that's why we need more ambition. We need to see more ambition here to defend what we are doing at home. We are very happy that there is a lot of interest in our measures to address climate change, a lot of interest in the market-based measures, emission trading and carbon border adjustment. They are key to deliver our commitments. They are the key instruments of the European Union. And they are also key to generate the money. So climate finance depends on ETS and CBAM because it's the source of money for the European Commission and for the member states to do what we need to do at this COP and at future occasions. We know that there are questions on CBAM in particular, and I'm very happy that the deputy chair of the Parliament's delegation is the rapporteur on CBAM. Mohammed Shaheen is here to answer any questions, so we are here to talk. But if somebody comes with the agenda here to destroy CBAM, he will destroy much more than CBAM. The ambition of the European Union, the commitment for international climate finance is also linked to the package that we have agreed. So let's talk, but let's not destroy important elements. So I hope the message is clear. We want global climate policy to succeed. We want to continue to lead by example, but we desperately need others to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lisa. So we'll take a few questions now. I see a hand in the second row and then one in the third. If we get the microphones to, yeah, gentleman here in the middle.
Thank you. Lukas Schall for Table Media. You mentioned it, Mr. Lisa, the CBAM has raised a lot of concerns here at COP, not only by China with their high per capita emissions, but also by clearly countries of the global south like South Africa or developing countries other non-Annex 1 countries like Brazil. And their biggest concern is that costs for them will increase despite the fact that it's within Europe it's a climate mechanism that might work, but for them it will mean additional costs. Have you done any mistakes previously communicating your legislation on CBAM maybe to countries like this, and what are you telling them in negotiation rooms here in Dubai? Thank you.
Thank you. If you maybe pass the mic back, row behind you. Yeah. Thanks.
Hi, Alice Hancock, Financial Times. I just wondered, coming into this COP, what is your sense of relations between the party delegations? How much trust has been lost over things, say, like the 100 billion figure or the geopolitical situation? And how are those being mended in the negotiations and as the COP develops? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, maybe on the first question, as I said, Mohammed is here to go in more detail, if you wish, afterwards. And there is also a side event of the European Union, European Commission and Parliament explaining the details on CBAM. So we have talked about this, of course, already before. We have already almost agreed on CBAM last year when we were in Sharm el-Sheikh. And a very important message is that a big bulk of the money that is collected by CBAM will be channeled back for international climate finance. So it's not for European industry, it's not for European budget, but it's for third countries. That is a very important message. And we see a lot of interest in third countries to increase ambition at home. And that's what we want to do. In the end, CBAM should be superfluous because we hope that every major emitter in the world would have a similar system with the same ambition in the long run. So it's not to punish third countries, it's to motivate them. And I have understood DG Climate is flooded by requests from third countries to learn, to copy-paste, and that's what we should achieve finally. And the rest I would leave for the event with Mohammed. Maybe, Mohammed, when is it exactly? Okay, but we will send you an invitation. So Saturday.
Maybe building on that, and then we'll come to the question of the FT in a sec. What is important to understand is that what we have done is create a system, a carbon market by which we are driving down basically CO2. And that has been at the heart of the whole ETS system. It has been a significant success. It has generated interest all across the globe. And the only purpose of CBAM is to make sure that we avoid carbon leakage. Not for our own sake, but for the sake of the planet and the whole reason why we're all here. And I was actually positively surprised by the conversations I had in Latin America, in Africa, and in Asia, and the appetite that I got there to do more in terms of carbon markets and how to work together to make sure that in the end, the emissions go to such a low level that these things become almost or completely obsolete. So I think that is one. Secondly, on the trust building, I think it is at the heart of the matter of what we're doing here. The reality simply is we are facing a tremendously difficult geopolitical landscape because of all what is going on in the world. The horrible war the Russians are waging in Ukraine, tensions in the Indo-Pacific, of course, all that is going on in the Middle East, great power rivalry being back at the global stage, and that is the context in which we operate. And of course, next to that, various countries have different interests, and with these interests, they are here at the table. That is simply what international diplomacy is all about. So that makes up for not necessarily very easy setup. But of course, the paradox is that it is ever more important to make sure we deliver, because scientists are telling us that the window of opportunity is closing. We need to deliver on a whole range, not just on a single issue, but on a whole range of assignments that we have here at the COP. And therefore, trust, building trust, reaching out, listening, making sure you're not only understood, but you also understand the others is of tremendous importance. And that has been at the heart also of the choice we have made, the push and the proactive approach we have taken on loss and damage. And I'm sure that you've gotten the message also from many other people that we did not want to treat this just as one of the negotiation chips, but as a trust builder, as a sign of commitment from the European at large, which has been instrumental. Member states have been instrumental in filling the fund, but also in creating the setup and making sure we got this out of the way. And frankly speaking, I think that is one of the reasons why we are further ahead, why we do have a bit of wind in our sails, that many actually did not expect some 6, 7, 8 weeks ago.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, hand raised in the middle, and then I will go here to the aisle for a second question.
Thank you, John Ainger, Bloomberg News. After your bilateral with the Cop28 President, Commissioner Hoekstra, how optimistic are you that there's going to be language on phasing out fossil fuels in the final agreement at Cop28? And secondly, I was wondering if we could get your reaction to Armenia dropping their bid to host Cop29, potentially freeing the way for Azerbaijan to do so. Is that something the EU would support? Thanks.
Hi, Ellie Kinney from the Conflict and Environment Observatory. Many civil society organisations are pleased to finally see within the European Parliament's COP28 resolution to see it address the importance of both transparent reporting of military and conflict emissions, as well as the need for the defence sector overall to reduce its emissions in order to achieve the continent's net zero ambition. How do you see the European Union carrying this issue forward within the UNFCCC? Thank you.
Maybe in the division of labour, I'll do the first two, and Peter, if I may ask you to do the last one. Just on fossil fuels, on the optimism, but also what is I think at the core of what we have to do here, simply because scientists tell us that if you want to do something that is at the very heart, you cannot walk around phasing out fossil fuels. It's as simply as that. It is not my desire, it is not a European desire, it is a reality that we should acknowledge and we should address. And therefore I told you earlier that I want COP28 to mark the beginning of the end of fossil fuels. That is something simply what we need to do. Having said that, the global stocktake is about much more than just this specific wording. It is about how we ensure that the phase-out happens. It is about creating the right conditions for the transition, identifying means to deliver, designing the process, and also taking into account the concerns of some who might be already in quite a difficult position. But it's also about, let's be frank about that, some would argue the absurdity of fossil fuel subsidies, which are holding us back. So we do have to address this. The COP president has made explicit a number of times that it is also his ambition to have this in the text. I think that is for all the right reasons. And what we now have to do is make sure that, we take the whole family along, and, we invite people to go further than where we are today. Again, we do that for future generations, not just because it is people negotiating here. Then maybe on COP29, a lot of information has been in the news recently, as you know, and therefore I'm going to be a bit moderate. It is for the regional groups, not for the European Union, to decide on the rotating presidency. Here it is, of course, about the Eastern European group. On a general note, I find it positive that there is a joint statement between two countries with a very tense relation, to say the least, and with a lot of things going on recently. So at the very least, as a confidence-building measure, I think this is very good news. We think as European Union, we've engaged a lot with these countries in the recent past. There is an historic chance to bring peace closer than it is today. But that is all I want to say about it at this stage of the conversation.
Yeah, on the defense sector, in fact, important and tricky issue. Maybe I will start with an experience that we had in the Environment Committee of the European Parliament some weeks ago. We had a meeting with the Environment Committee from the Rada from Ukraine. And they explained us in very strong and explicit words how the war, the Russian aggression, destroys also the environment and what are the consequences also for the climate of this war. So that needs to be looked at. It's also in our resolution. In the military sector, I see more and more recognition that we have a huge problem with climate change. Also, security is in danger when we don't control, we don't mitigate climate change. And that's why they are reaching out and looking at what they can contribute. We were always a bit hesitant in our legislation to include military. It is, of course, sensible. For example, I see the rapporteur, Jan Huitema, on CO2 cars. Military cars are not yet covered by CO2 cars, but the military itself, they understand that they also need to look at the climate effect of what they are doing.
Thank you very much. I have a question here in the front row, and then in, I think it's the fifth row.
Good afternoon. What is the European definition of unabated?
Thank you. European definition of unabated for anybody that didn't catch it, and then in the white shirts on the aisle. Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much. Brad Plumer with the New York Times. Could you just outline what the one or two hardest issues over this coming week to reach agreement are? Like, what do you see as the biggest sticking points towards reaching a final agreement?
Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, your question immediately links in with the previous one. So let me actually combine them. The reality is, and the reality we need to face and actually embrace, is that we have to phase out fossil fuels. Period. That we do our utmost, that we come up with very ambitious language at this COP. Of course, well knowing that you cannot stop this from one day to the next, and that yes, there is a distinction to be made between sectors, and some sectors are simply, certainly today, hard to abate. And as I said at the previous press conference, therefore it is also crystal clear that CCS is part of the solution space, but make no mistake, we cannot CCS ourselves out of the problem. It simply doesn't exist. We need to drive down emissions, we need to drive down fossil fuels, and yes, then part, but a minor part of the solution space is being linked to this. I mean, what is the hardest issue? Well, this is clearly high on the list. I'm positive about what we did manage to do on loss and damage. Again, this enables for much better conversations. I am optimistic about where we stand in terms of tripling renewables. And I'm optimistic about the atmospherics and the sentiments I've gotten so far with constructive conversations, substantial conversations that of course we need to have more of them. We need courage. We need creativity in the days to come. But in the end, this is, I think, a pivotal issue to move ahead with.
Okay, I think we've probably got time for a couple more questions. Yeah, here in the second row.
Philip Kirkegaard, Danish Media Klima Monitor. So Sultan Al-Jaber, at the previous presentation, he used the word face down. And Dan Jørgensen from my country, who was also in the panel, he used the word face out, just like you do. But could the EU live with a face down in this meeting, in the text?
Look, again, and I'm referring to this not only to you, but I'm referring to this with all the conversations I'm having. And I'm trying to make a distinction between many of the negotiations I've been part of in national politics and in the international arena. It is very often, two countries or a group of countries negotiating, and you're looking for the middle ground. Yes, to some extent that is true here as well, but there is a significant difference. We cannot negotiate with the scientific reality outside. And therefore, it is the case that scientists are telling us that the simple reality we're facing is that if we want to make sure we keep 1.5 in reach, we simply need to do much more. And if we commit ourselves to doing much more, we have to go to the heart of the matter, and we have to phase out fossil fuels again. In the context that I was just laying out. So it is. That is not something you can do from one day to the next. And yes, part, but only a minor part of the solution space will be CCS. But the hard and difficult work needs to be done, needs to be acknowledged here, and that is about phasing out.
If I may just add and quote again the European Parliament's resolution, because that is why we are here and the Commission is under pressure also. A tangible phase-out of fossil fuels as soon as possible. We don't speak about unabated here, including by halting all investments in fossil fuel extraction. And we have already discussed this in our delegation. There is not even a definition of unabated. So some strange idea are flooding around, and this will not bring us to the 1.5 degrees target.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our 30 minutes, and there's no more hands raised, so obviously everybody is satisfied. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Lise.
Thank you very much.
Next one's at 4 o'clock. might go and take 10 minutes outside. No, he got the name wrong. I think he called you, and then he said camera 2. So I think he just... Yeah, it's all right. I think he just went like that. That's because you are tight. I've seen you in the bar. You never managed to find one at the bar. Yeah, you've got very short arms and very deep. Very short arms. All right. I mean, I don't know the shape.